The Case of the Missing General. Chapter 7, Frederick is Kidnapped. It was Monday afternoon and Dorian and Frederick were having their first secret meeting at Frederick's lab to try and find out more about the general's mysterious disappearance. Little did they know that 2 days earlier, Stephen and Sheila had discovered the secret headquarters of the Portal Project. After hours spent poring over the general's gathered materials, Dorian and Frederick reached the same conclusion that Stephen and Sheila had come to: General Armstrong had surely disappeared through an interdimensional portal. What Dorian and Frederick did not know, however, is whether or not the general's escape through the portal had been of his own volition. Frederick, having acquired the very same coordinates as Stephen and Sheila had found at the general's home, had convinced Dorian that their next best step would be to take a drive out to the location of the coordinates. Frederick went on to explain, to Dorian's astonishment, that interdimensional portals connect different locations in space and time, and so any faction gaining control of such a portal would potentially wield a great deal of power. Dorian was beginning to grasp the gravity of the situation even more as she and Frederick continued to delve deeper into the general's enigmatic life. The lab buzzed with a palpable energy, punctuated by the soft hum of machines and the occasional rustle of papers scattered across the lab's sleek, metallic surfaces. Dorian and Frederick often paused to exchange knowing glances, a mix of determination and apprehension reflecting in their eyes. The great General Armstrong, a figure steeped in heroics and whispered legend, had vanished without a trace, his fate apparently intertwined with the secrets of interdimensional existence. Frederick, pacing the confines of the lab, paused beside a corkboard plastered with papers, maps, and photographs, each a fragment of the puzzle they were attempting to solve. "It really is quite extraordinary to think about, Dorian," he said, his voice a blend of eagerness and caution. "If the general is indeed somewhere across dimensions, we might not just find him, we will likely uncover astonishing revelations about the very nature of the multiverse itself." Dorian straightened in her seat, and as she struggled to comprehend the unfathomable idea of a multiverse, her mind raced with the possibilities and possible dangers. "Or we could walk right into a trap, Frederick. We really do need to be prepared for anything." Suddenly then, as if Dorian had been having a premonition, a noise from the hallway abruptly interrupted their meeting, and they tensed up as they heard a muffled conversation in the hallway. It was too distant to decipher, yet it was close enough to alarm them. Dorian and Frederick exchanged a silent, worried glance. "Who else is here?" Dorian whispered. Frederick's brow furrowed in deep concern as he whispered back a reply: "I do not want to unduly alarm you, Dorian, but I have been worried ever since the general's report was released to the public that there might be government spies here at the lab. I don't know who is here, but I can tell you this: it is after hours, and there should be no one here but us." Frederick hurriedly adjusted his glasses to better see before motioning protectively for Dorian to follow him. He led the way, his footsteps nearly silent on the cold, polished floor, each step driven by an instinctual urgency as they crept toward the door. Whatever danger lurked outside was gnawing at the edges of his mind, and the palpable tension hung heavy in the air around them. When Frederick finally pushed the door ajar, just enough to peek through, he let out an involuntary gasp. A shiver went down Dorian's spine at the sound, her heart galloping in rhythm with her racing thoughts. Wondering just what Frederick could have seen, she watched him pass through the door while motioning for her to stay behind in the lab. Dorian's heart beat loudly in her ears as she positioned herself at the door of the lab and peeked out to watch as Frederick stepped silently out into the hallway and headed off in the direction of the muffled voices. It was only seconds before Dorian had to stifle a scream. Frederick had barely taken a few paces when 2 men clad in plain brown suits emerged from the shadows, their movements sinister and calculating. Her instincts screamed that they were trouble, and just as Frederick attempted to turn to retreat and head back to her, they closed in on him with a speed that left her breathless. Dorian's heart raced as she watched the men roughly seize his arms, an adrenaline-fueled panic flooding her senses. No. Frederick, she thought frantically, her blood running cold as they began to steer him away from the sanctity of the lab and down another adjacent hallway. The sight sent a wave of terror coursing through her, and for a split second, she froze, staring wide-eyed as they turned the corner and vanished from her sight. A sob caught in her throat as she realized the reality of what had just happened. Her new dear friend and ally had been kidnapped. But who were these men? The thought shot through her mind like a lightning bolt. Were they really government agents as Frederick had thought, or could they be plainclothes policemen? All the unknowns sent panic spiraling within her, but then suddenly, a welcome flicker of determination ignited her spirit. She knew she had to act fast, she had to find a way to rescue Frederick before time slipped away and turned the situation into something irretrievable. Dorian glanced back at the lab and suddenly the image of Stephen flashed in her mind. He always knew what to do in situations like these, and she desperately searched her mind for his expertise. What would Stephen have done if he were here? How would he have navigated through such treacherous waters? Taking a deep breath to steady her resolve, Dorian steeled herself. She decided to do something risky and go to the site of the coordinates the general had left in his papers by herself. Frederick had been certain they would find out what happened to the general at those coordinates, and so she felt she had to try. She also held out hope that she might find out, not only more about the general's whereabouts at the site of the coordinates, but maybe Stephen and Sheila's too. Having made up her mind, Dorian quietly edged her way back into the lab, adrenaline coursing through her veins and with her mind racing with plans and possibilities. Then moving swiftly, she picked up the piece of paper where Frederick had written down the general's coordinates, and as a last-minute decision she grabbed the lab's telephone and, hoping she was not making matters worse, quickly dialed the police. Feeling an urgent need to leave the lab, Dorian fought the impulse to flee as the phone rang. Thankfully someone picked it up on the first ring. 5th Precinct, Lieutenant Stan Lewinsky speaking. Dorian whispered into the mouthpiece. Please, it's an emergency, a man has been kidnapped. I am in danger too and I can't talk on this line for long. The man who has been kidnapped is Dr. Frederick Eisenhart. 2 men in brown suits abducted him. The lieutenant sounded genuinely alarmed as he replied. Ma'am, is this by any chance the same Dr. Eisenhart who has been working with General Armstrong? Dorian nearly yelled out loud in surprise but caught herself. You know about this already? Yes, it is the very same person. I almost didn't call because I don't know who to trust right now, but I am just so afraid for Frederick that I had to do something. What the lieutenant said next surprised her even more. Ma'am, trust me, you did the right thing by calling, and fate is on your side that it was me who answered. I am acquainted with the situation and I strongly advise you to vacate the premises, ma'am, right away. What is your current location? Dorian drew in a sharp breath before replying. I am at Benton Labs on Chilton Road. Okay, ma'am, again I strongly advise you to leave the premises immediately and get to safety. I am heading there now. The lieutenant hung up and Dorian set the phone down on its cradle. She then moved as fast as she could, knowing that every second counted, all the while mentally preparing herself for the challenges ahead. She was well aware that the fate of Frederick and all of them and possibly much more hung precariously in the balance. Not to mention Frederick was counting on her, and so she was determined not to let fear dictate her actions. Panic surged through Dorian as she turned to survey the lab, the sterile white walls suddenly closing in on her. The lieutenant was coming and she had to find a way to escape before the men in brown suits returned. Even though she already had the piece of paper containing the general's coordinates, She lingered longer to dart across the lab, each footstep echoing ominously against the tiled floor as she rifled through drawers and cabinets, desperately looking for anything more that might help her find the general or come to Frederick's aid. Just as she was about to give up, she gasped as her fingers grazed over a manual labeled Interdimensional Research Protocol and, for a moment, she hesitated. Suddenly a faint shuffling outside the door of the lab motivated her, and she willed herself to move, and clutching the manual against her chest like a lifeline, she decided to try using the door leading to the back of the lab. With a glance through the small window in the lab's back door, she spotted a shadow creeping through the hallway and gasped in alarm. Not wanting to meet Frederick's fate, she hurriedly slipped out the back door and into an alley that ran behind the lab. Once outside, the chill of the night air hit her like a bucket of ice, the sounds of the city muffled by the fear thrumming in her veins. She ducked into the shadows, her mind racing. She needed to get to her car without being noticed, and with her heart thumping in her chest she ran as fast as she could to the parking lot, and with a sigh of relief she spotted her car. Her hands shook as she hurriedly searched her purse for her car keys, and moving quickly to open her car door, she tossed the manual onto the passenger seat and jumped in behind the wheel. Quickly retrieving the general's coordinates from her purse, she turned the key in the ignition and started the car. With a final glance behind her, she fervently hoped the lieutenant had already arrived and was helping Frederick escape. Letting out a worried sigh, she knew she had no choice at the moment but to trust Frederick's safety to the lieutenant. As Dorian sped away from Benton Labs, the cityscape blurred around her. The concrete jungle seemed alive, as if aware of the peril she faced. The streets flickered past, illuminated by streetlights casting elongated shadows, hinting at the secrets hidden in the night. Her heart raced with every turn, fueled by the urgency of her mission.